everyone, and welcome to episode 125 of the Dear Herbalist podcast, titled Extraction Solvents, What You Pull Determines What You Heal. If you are new here, you are most certainly welcome. If you are a continuing listener, as always, I told you, I appreciate you, I heart you. Thank you so very much for your continued support of the Dear Herbalist podcast. If you are new here, we started out with a lot of basic information in herbal medicine. And so now we are in a stage and a phase of herbal formulation where we're going to start diving deeper. So if some of these topics I talk about moving forward may seem a bit much or a little more advanced, no worries. Go ahead and go back to podcast number 1 and work your way forward, and you'll be right where you should be by the time you get to podcast number right near 125. So thank you so much for listening. I want to talk about on this podcast about a variety of different issues, but formulation is something that in my research, a lot of people tend to struggle with. So I want to zero in on that so that we can move towards a more targeted formulation herbal strategies. So sorry guys, I just had a piece of chocolate and it's just like rumbling around. So if I sound a little crazy in the beginning, forgive me. But welcome, and thank you for tuning in to tonight's episode. But let's go ahead and dive in, because I'm also the type of person that I don't like to do a lot of yapping. I definitely want to dive in and get to the point, because that's what you're here for. I'm hoping you clicked on it because you read the description and you're like, you know what? I'm really interested in this. And because you clicked on it, I don't want to waste your time. So let's go ahead and dive on in. So what are extraction solvents? Extraction solvents are liquids used to pull out medicinal or therapeutic compounds from the plants. The type of solvent you choose determines which group of plant chemicals you extract, and this will shape your final remedy. So for example, dandelion tea, which is a water extract, is entirely different in effect from a dandelion tincture, which is an alcohol extract. So even though both come from the same plant, solvents used are pulling different types of chemicals from each part of that plant. Another concept that you are going to hear most times in herbal formulation is polarity. And polarity basically describes how well a solvent attracts water-loving, which is also called hydrophilic, or fat-loving, which is lipophilic substances. So when you hear the concept of polarity, which is very important when you're talking about which type of solvent to use, that is exactly what that means. How well does this particular solvent attract, if that's what it's going for, water-loving or fat-loving substances? And all of this matters. So let's look at some of the typical solvents. One is water. Now, water is very polar, and it extracts hydrophilic, which means water-loving compounds like minerals, sugars, and mucilage. Alcohol is another solvent, and it's medium polar, especially when you mix it with water. It extracts alkaloids, bitters, resins, and volatile oils. Oil, on the other hand, is nonpolar because it pulls out fat-soluble compounds such as resins, essential oils, and it's ideal for topical use. So not every solvent extracts the same compounds, which is why your choice really matters. Let's take a second and look at plant structure and extraction. Within different parts of the plant, there's a concentration of different medicinal compounds. So with roots and bark, in those areas of the plant, it's rich in tannins and alkaloids, and it usually requires alcohol extraction or a long boiling method, which we call decoctions, in order to extract those compounds out of there. Leaves and flowers, that part of the plant, contain volatile oils and flavonoids, and this is well extracted by water or low alcohol mixtures. Seeds and resins, they house fat-soluble compounds, often need oil or strong alcohol in order to extract the medicinal compounds that come from seeds or resins. And then another thing that people don't think about is when you harvest. So harvest timing actually affects the chemistry because volatile oils peak at full bloom and roots maximizes their alkaloids and sugars in the fall. So when you harvest them at their maximum height, their peak, that matters as well. And that's how you know, again, when you're talking about a more targeted approach in herbal medicine, that is one of the ways that can help get you closer to guaranteeing that your herbal remedy will actually be effective. Let's look at some solvents and talk a little bit deeper about what they pull and then also the typical uses for those type of solvents. So we'll start with water. Water is best for minerals and mucilage. That's what they pull. So common uses of water would be to make teas, infusions, decoctions, because it soothes the mucosal surfaces of the body. Alcohol is another solvent, and it pulls alkaloids, resins, and oils. And it's best used for tinctures. And within the tinctures, you want about 25 to 40% alcohol for fresh herbs, and you want 60 to 90% alcohol for the tougher parts of the plant, like your roots and that type of thing. Glycerin. Glycerin extracts gentle extracts, right? It's very gentle, and it's typically used for kids or pets, situations where people that may be alcohol free, and the shelf life of glycerin is about 6 to 12 months. Oil. Oil is fat soluble, so it pulls fat soluble compounds, and it's best used for salves, massage oils, because it's topical and it's known to really support the endocrine system. Okay, so you can use it best on top of the skin. And then the other one we'll talk about is vinegar. Vinegar contains mineral-rich extracts, and it's gentle. It has like a food-like remedy to it. Okay. Vinegar is more than just for salad dressing, and typically people use apple cider vinegar, but it extracts minerals and some alkaloids, especially from softer plants or as a menstruum for herb-infused culinary preparations. So it is especially valued for increasing mineral bioavailability, and you want to think about that in terms of clients that you may have that are absent or low in certain minerals. You might want to consider vinegar. And it is safe for alcohol-free populations. That's the people who maybe they were struggling with alcohol addiction. You definitely don't want to be giving them tinctures with a solvent of alcohol, or children sometimes may have sensitivities. And so you might not want to give it to them, even though when we were children, we had our hot toddies, our grandparents, wrapped us up really tight and we just sweat out the cold, right? But nowadays everybody's so daggone sensitive to everything. And so you want to be careful with the alcohol-based remedies for children. Okay, I have to say that. But with vinegar, the shelf life is generally 6 to 12 months when you refrigerate it. So keep that in mind. Now, let's talk about how to match the extraction, okay, to the body system. So I'll talk about the system, the ideal solvent to use to extract properties that will address that particular system, and then why. So let's start with our digestive system. Now, the ideal solvents to use with the digestive system, okay, these are the solvents to pull out the medicinal properties from the herbs you select to address and target specifically the digestive system. One of the things that you want to keep in mind is that with these particular systems, there's a thing called herb affinity. So you want to make sure that whatever herbs you're using, they have first and foremost a liking to or an affinity to that particular system. So just for sake of simple example, ginger. Ginger has a strong affinity to the digestive system. So this is something that you might want to look at. An ideal solvent to address digestive issues would be water or low alcohol solvents. And this is because it soothes and tones moist tissues. You don't want to scar them. You don't want to damage them. You don't want anything too strong acting on those particular types of tissues. let's look at the nervous system. Now, with the nervous system, the ideal solvents to use are either alcohol or oil. And this is because they have a deep action on the body and they cross the blood-brain barrier. So this is one of the reasons why you want to use those two solvents for that particular system. Another system is your skin, the integument system, and topical. So anything that you're trying to put on top of your skin. The ideal solvent for that is either oil or alcohol. And that's because it can be more localized, as well as it has fat soluble actions. And your skin needs that. The other system is your endocrine system. So solvents for that would be oil and alcohol. And this because it targets hormone pathways. And anytime you have issues with your endocrine system, there is a disruption in your hormone pathways. As a formulating herbalist, it is your job just to figure out which one that is so that you can address and formulate to that particular pathway. And that we'll have more deeper conversations around that as we move forward. But that's just a side note. And then another system is your immune system or your lymphatic system. The solvents best used for that are water and alcohol. And this is because it balances both the hydrophilic, water-loving, and the aromatic support. These are important when taking in consideration how to formulate for your immune and lymphatic system. And again, of course, you want to utilize herbs or herbs, as they say in England. You want to utilize those that have an affinity to that particular system. So it'll save you a little time. If you want to write in your herbalist notebook, write down all the systems of the human body. Okay, don't forget the excretory system. That is your organs of elimination. So write all those down and then write down the list of herbs that have an affinity to that particular system and start from there. Side note again. So let's look at a clinical case study really quick. I may give you one or two, but we're going to talk about a guy named Jeffrey. Now, Jeffrey, he is a client with mild anxiety, and he has a lot of digestive tension in his tummy. Okay, tightening of the tummy, a lot of things going on. Now, from a spiritual perspective, then we understand anxiety, the blood, the brain and the stomach are really tightly connected. That is the reason why when you get nervous and anxious, then you feel like you're nauseous. You want to throw up. You've got knots in your stomach. And that is because there's a connection there. But let's move on back to the client. Mild anxiety and digestive tension. So with him, the goal is to focus on gentle support for digestion and calming his gut spasms. That's first and foremost. And we're going to do that with some lemon balm tea. Now, we're going to hold on to lemon balm throughout this whole formulation. One, because we want to keep it simple. There are times where you want to mix a variety of different herbs to target a variety of different things. And then there are times where you can use that one herb, okay, to be able to address a variety of different things. That's the beauty of herbal medicine. The compounds that are within the herbs, often there's multi-compounds that can address a variety of different issues within the body. That's the beauty of it. That's why you don't have to have these 100 herb formulas. I think in China, maybe the max is like 20 or 30. So when you're skilled, you can do that. But if you're average, everyday Joe Schmo, and even at the clinical level, you'll learn that you don't have to have 100 different herbs, but you really do want a more targeted approach. So if you can use less amount of herbs as possible to get the job done, then you want to do that, especially if you're trying to minimize, potential reactions and things like that with your clients. So we talked about the tea. Let's also look at a lemon balm tincture. He can also take a tincture of lemon balm because this will target the underlying nervous system and it acts as a nervine. People that have anxiety are very anxious. And because of that, what they do is they flip the switch on their fight or flight response. And so the body feels like it has to keep them in a constant protective mode. Something is wrong. They either are facing something that they have to fight or something they have to flee from. So because that's going on, the body is activating all its normal processes within the body unnecessarily, but it is doing that because that is what it is designed to do. Okay, so it may move more blood down to your legs and give you more strength. So that way, if you got to run, you got to run and do what you got to do. But whatever the case is, you are keeping the switch on with your fight or flight response, which is not a good idea. So a nervine like lemon balm will help the person to relax. Okay, it will help the body to relax. And then lastly, lemon balm oil. This can be massaged over the solar plexus for acute anxiety or cold sore outbreaks. If somebody has that, if that's paired with the anxiety and the digestive issues. So the outcome is the combination will address both the surface, digestive, and deeper nervous system layers, okay, by strategically choosing the solvent. So you want to both address the digestive issues as well as the nervous system issues. And how you do that, you have to strategically make sure you choose the right solvent. So let's look at another one. A naturopath formulates an herbal calcium vinegar using horsetail, nettle, and oat straw, steeping it in apple cider vinegar. And this would be for bone support. Now, vinegar as the solvent efficiently pulls minerals without alcohol. And it's ideally, like I said before, for children or even the elderly. And the outcome with that is that the client with dairy intolerance will have improved bone mineral density markers after consistent dietary use. So that is the use of solvents in action. So let's look at troubleshooting common extraction pitfalls. Number one, emulsification problems. If you are having these type of problems, this can occur when you're mixing oil and water-based extracts. So you want to use an emulsifier like beeswax or lectin, or if you want to keep preparations separate until you use them. Another common extraction issue is your maceration time. So it could be too short, which means that you're not going to get a sufficient extraction. Or it could be too long and you could be risking spoilage or over extraction of bitter or astringent compounds. And let's be real, nobody wants to drink a large cup of bitter tea. So no. So a standard guideline for tinctures is about 2 to 6 weeks. And for vinegars and glycerates, it's until the color or the flavor is saturated. So that is when you're talking about maceration, meaning putting the plants inside of the solution or the solvent. Okay. Another common issue is the quality of your solvent. So you always want to use food grade solvents. If you have low quality alcohol or rancid oil, this can often introduce off flavors, nasty flavors, or contaminants. So make sure you have quality, especially if you are formulating to sell products to people. Nobody wants a nasty tasting tincture or oil or have something with a weird smell. No, you don't. Nobody wants that. Okay. The other thing is stability issues. And this can also often occur, especially with like glycerates and oils. So you want to store them in a cool area. You can add antioxidants for a longer shelf life, and that'll help extend it when it comes to stability issues. All right. In terms of stability, we're going to end with safety, stability, and ethics. So number one, like I said before, I'm going to give you some final tips here. Use food grade alcohol and cold press oils only. I know other people may have other ways that they do things. Try my way. And if it works out for you, great. Another thing is shelf life. With alcohol tinctures, it can last up to 3 to 5 years. With glycerates and vinegars, it can last 6 to 12 months. You want to refrigerate your glycerates. And if it's any type of oils, you can extend the shelf life of your oils with vitamin E, and they can last up to 6 to 9 months. Another tip is to avoid industrial solvents like hexane and acetone because these are for lab use. not herbal home preparations. Don't hurt yourself out here. Always be safe. And at the end of the day, respect individual needs. So keep some alcohol-free options for kids, pets, those that might be in recovery, those that are indigenous to certain populations where alcohol is not respected or even allowed. Okay. Respect individuals' needs. Even though alcohol can be the best in certain situations, the beauty of herbs is that you can always find another herb to get the job done. That is the beauty of it all. So if somebody unfortunately can't do alcohol, don't try to force it on them. Yeah, y'all know what it is. Keep it humble, right? Keep it humble. But at the end of the day, what you extract determines how the body heals and how targeted your formulation is. Every solvent is a bridge connecting the plant's intelligence to a specific body system. So your clinical success depends not just on the plant you choose, but how you pull and deliver its medicine. That is important. So choose your solvent as thoughtfully as you choose your herb, and your remedies will actually meet your client's needs with precision and respect. And if you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on all my social media sites at The Demystified Herbalist. And until next time, family, thank you so much for listening, and I'm out.